Welcome. Today, Lauren, Christine, and I are going to be talking about sun transits 9 and 5. And we're going to be looking around, seeing what we can learn and what we can play with over the next two periods of 5.5 days. And lately, we've been sort of doing a little bit of a regression and looking at what happened in the last two sun transits. So I think, Lauren, you have something to share.
Well, I do. Let's talk about the gate we're in right now, and that's gate 34. As we're recording this, we're just like midway through, in gate 34 being the gate of power. And the question I remember sharing from Hilary Barrett's translation of the I Ching hexagram 34 is, how will you use your power? And I also have this gate in my chart. So literally, this has been a daily invitation to me each day in a different flavor. Okay, Lauren, how will you use your power today? What about today? What what about today? And I'm walking into this recording with you all, just coming from an experience where I really felt like I could vocalize things that I've been holding back for a long period of time. And I wonder about that in this use of power, if others that are listeners also experiencing that ability to pull from deep inside them what it is they really need to say, or what action they really need to take.
Yeah,
Rather,
it
oh,
is the power of the great, right? So, I mean, there is this real, like we talked about, it has such a deep connection to so much of us, this gate, like so many centers. Um, I think it's the connection of the power to the self that is
Mm,
a really important piece of this energy.
so
yeah, I mean, I could say I feel it physically this week, and again, I have this gate, but this sense of feeling my power in a way that maybe I don't ordinarily feel.
but you just sort of like there was like a somatic experience
Mhm.
here for you to remember, like because you really felt it now. And now that you felt it, maybe there's more capacity to tap into it.
Lois, that's beautiful. I mean, it's just what we learned through polyvagal theory. And once we begin to feel what safety feels like, we can come back to it. And I think that's the lessons in all of these gates. What comes up for me right now, though, this is the second time that in recent period where I've had this gate in my design, and I've had this exactly a somatic experience. And I don't know if that's true for others when the gate's in their design, but it's been as if the energy of the gate is traveling through me over the course of the 5 days.
Well, and this is from a somatic perspective. Again, this is in our sacral center, right? And the sacral is really known as the kind of yes no binary center of our life force, right? And so not everybody has this defined, and so it is often not as clear to some people, but this gate is in that space where I think there is this really deep connection to this gut instinct, right? This is when we think about, trust your gut. What we're saying is trust this sacral in response inside of you. And so there may be a real opportunity in this last few days of this 34 to really feel that thing inside of you in that kind of binary way that could be really helpful.
Yeah. It also makes me think about a technique that a lot of psychologists use with finding an inner safe space
Mhm.
that when needs arise is that you can bring yourself back to that space. So it makes me think it's something that can be developed, even if it isn't just coming up naturally for a person.
That. Yeah, I love that. And again, this 34, like we're shifting out of 34 into gate 9, which is what we're looking at next, also a sacral gate, right? So also a place within us that will have maybe the same opportunity. Um, and gate 9 is about focus and about the hexagram names. Some of these hexagram names are just so lovely. They're just like, this is the taming power of the small, right? Which I really love. And so this is really about an energy about focusing on small things, small details. It connects up to parts of our gates in our ajna that are about, details as well, how we express detail. But this is about how we, again, kind of the power of the detail, right? The power of how we can focus on small things in order to achieve big things, right? And so there's a lot of energy in this gate 9 for um, being aware of the fact that we can become overwhelmed by the big picture, and it's actually the small steps that get us through life essentially, right? And so this is going to be this moment in time, I think, where there will be this real energy to be present in this sacral response for the things that matter in small ways in the moment, that can be really powerful. It is also connected, in its where it is in the sacral, it connects down to the root. And the gate that it connects to is gate 52, which is stillness, which I think is a particularly interesting energy because our root is our fuel energy. It's a lot of activated energies in that root, except for gate 52, which is stillness, right? And so there really will be this, I think, real energy for focus and stillness in this time period. We're talking November 27th to the December 2nd. Like that energy, I think, could be really lovely, especially given what's going on in the world, right? Especially this time of year, all of it. So really, being with this kind of focused stillness could be very powerful, I think.
And it's the thing that people have a really hard time being with. And then they feel like they're bored. And now we're looking at being bored as maybe a catalyst for maybe something else is going on here for
Mm.
and to pay attention in a different way because we're so busy, and so that idea of stillness is difficult. And it's thinking about, I think Thich Nhat Hanh has talked a lot about things like when you're doing mundane things, is just being in the present and I'm doing the mundane thing and getting to where that isn't really boring and it isn't really interfering with your life flow. So it's like if you're doing shoveling snow here today, it's just it's what I'm doing now, and not rushing ahead to, well, I need to be doing this and I need to be doing that, and just appreciating the being in the present.
Yeah, and that appreciation, Lois, and being in the present, I think will have been strengthened having come through the gate we're in. So moving from 34 and really feeling where your source of not necessarily power, but strength is, because this is a gate about restraint, gate 9, and it's about restraining down to the small. And it's easy to be loud in the world. We see a lot of that. It's easy to be boisterous and big and flashy. It's actually much more difficult to walk that path like Thich Nhat Hanh did, of simplicity and quiet and paying very close attention to the details. And I think this is correct. It's showing up right now as we're moving into this closer and closer to this period of darkness and closer to the winter solstice, to notice all the intricate details that are present for us even in nature.
Yeah, it makes me think about you both of what you're saying reminds me of I've been walking in the morning in this little woods that's near the house, and I don't see a ton of people, but the people I've seen, every single one of them this past week, and I think probably
Mhm.
further back than that, has been walking on they've got their phone out.
Mhm.
And I'm just, and like they're walking a dog with a phone, they're walking with friends with a phone or partners with phones. Nobody else other than me was present and paying attention to the walk that they were actually on, right? And so I don't know, there's also this aspect of attention in this energy too, right? Like you can't pay focused attention on, on details, right, without the attention, right? And so there's something really in here about this dissociative thing that we're doing in our daily life with the phone. Unfortunately, it's usually the phone. I think there are other things that keep us away too,
Mhm.
but I don't know. This might be a great moment in time to try to just put the phone down. Like, go for a walk and walk. Have a conversation.
Mm,
Have a conversation. Go to dinner with somebody and be at dinner with them, right? Like
mm.
this is a real opportunity, I think, to focus on those things. Um, in a way that I feel like we're kind of getting away from in some way as a collective.
It was interesting you talked about walking in the woods, and because Richard Rudd uses the like walking, like every like the stepping stones, one step at a time, just put one foot in front of the other. But he talks about people walking in a circle, right? And if we keep going in the same circle, and think somehow thinking things are moving ahead, rather than maybe it should become a spiral, or maybe the path should just head off over into the horizon and see what happens. And I know Thomas Hubel talks about this, like in changing things, is that people are walking down, moving towards the future, but they're taking the path from behind them, putting it in front, and walking the same path. So nothing's changing. So
Mm,
it's like to allow the steps to move us beyond and into something new.
mm. The image that comes to my mind when I'm thinking of coming into gate 9 is kind of this closing in of sort of like where a horse wears blinders, right? We can only see the road, and that's not where we want to be all the time. And it would become really annoying and we would miss things. But for a short burst of time, it could be very awakening for us and noticing things we don't normally notice. And Hillary Barrett's question for that period of time, and I think her interpretation for 9, hexagram 9, is small taming. And her question that she asks is, what small thing can I work on today? And I love that because that's kind of a question I ask myself every day. What's one thing I can move forward today? One way I can be of service. And this again might be one of those things, like you said, Lois, once you touch into it and you experience it, you can keep it going. And that I think there's a lot of promise in that with this gate. I also want to mention, while I'm at it, the Gemmo that I see again. So when I go like this, I immediately think of silver birch seed. And silver birch seed, being a seed, super powerful, but super focused. And it does exactly this when you take it. Like, what do you see right here in front of you that needs attending? And it is food for the brain in the way that no other Gemmo provides. And so it gives that nutritious boost so that you can do that. You can go into that state of focus. And silver birch as a group, because we have silver birch sap and we have silver birch bud, and then we also have silver birch seed as a group. The oracle message from the tree is about asking you to step into your light and serve your community. And while this can take many shapes and forms, you have to ponder your first steps. And I think that's what gate 9 is about. That what are the small steps? What is the small thing I can work on right now? And my sense is a morning microdose of silver birch seed may be helpful.
And in connection with that, I was just, as you were explaining, is that to pay attention to what's happening for you while you're doing things. Like if you actually settle in and be present in what you're doing, see what happens to your sense of time.
Mm.
It's like we could be doing something like the dishes and be in a big rush, and it feels like it's taking so long and it's interfering. And if you just like sort of settle into it and be with it, um, does it feel the same way?
Mm.
Does it feel like maybe you've got some more spaciousness in your life?
Yeah, that's interesting. It also makes me think about like when I see this energy in somebody's body graph, it's what we call a format energy. And so it has this extra power to actually color a bunch of things that are going on in somebody's life,
Mm.
right? This ability to focus, which can be really positive and lovely. And I've seen it be the opposite, right? Where we can use this focus in detrimental ways, right? The things that we choose to focus on, the things that we're paying attention to aren't actually great for us. They aren't moving us forward. They're keeping us stuck, and yet we can't lose the focus on it, right? We can't stop
Mm.
that way. And so I'm curious, like, especially like from a Gemmo standpoint, if the silver birch seed does anything in that regard, or if there were another Gemmo that would help shift if somebody was so focused on things that aren't actually productive for them.
Yeah. So I think what I am hearing you say, if there's that hyper focus, almost an obsessive focus, would it back it off? Yeah, I think I mean, when you send nutrition to the brain and you're bringing it into harmony, I think that's exactly what it would do. It would work with either state, whether it's extreme hyper alertness or kind of that dullness that we might fall into.
But that getting trapped in the minutia, I think that would need to be an awareness around that
Mhm.
of, is this super focus serving anything? Or is it just sort of soothing something for me because I'm comfy here?
Yeah, I great. And I totally agree. And again, I think that's a space where maybe during this time frame, again, this is a sacral energy. Maybe there will be more ability to like query your own inner knowing, like, hey, is this really helping? Is this really like there may be this sacral energy to be like, yeah, no, stop. Right.
Yeah.
Wasting your time.
Right. Um, yeah, so as so we'll move out of gate 9 in December 2nd, and December 3rd will be in gate 5, which is also another sacral energy. So we have a lot of this life force energy in this part of the wheel, which makes sense because we are in this quarter, this eighth of the wheel right now, where the bottom trigram is heaven, right? It is the creative, right? And so there is, I think, a lot of this creative life force energy in this sacral space. And so it makes sense that we're kind of walking through these gates, these very yang based, mutative energies, right? They're here to help us close up the cycle of the year, right? We're now at the very end, essentially, of the year in many ways, and this last quarter is all about mutation, right? What have you learned over the course of the year, and how are you going to transform it to start out in the new year again in the middle of January? And so gate 5 is called fixed rhythms, and it's the hexagram name is waiting. And so again, it is also it's a very, folks that have this energy tend to really do have their own patterns in life, right? They may not do very well in the traditional 9 to 5 world, right? It might be very difficult for them to follow other people's patterns, essentially. And so, there is a lot of that energy here. So I'm curious in this beginning part of December if we'll feel that, right? If we'll feel this thing about having to follow other people's rhythms in some form or fashion, and if that what that does for us. So Um, and then, part of the gift in it is this waiting thing, which again, we live in a society where there is no gift in waiting, right? Like nobody teaches us that waiting is a good thing. But truly, there is this ability to be patient in some ways, which might be, I mean, that's the gift. Of course, the shadow is impatience, right? But noticing those things in this time period could be really helpful too, right? Like, am I being impatient with other people's patterns? That's probably what's going to show up for us. So, um,
Mhm.
play around with
Just need to go out on the road and see that one. Somebody who's practically in your trunk or won't move in front of you. But that impatience, and it's become such a huge thing, especially the larger like populations that you live in, is that you can feel the impatience around you, and the lack of willingness to just take a minute, and so, which really ties quite nicely with gate 9 here. But it's like, so what's wrong with stepping back? Let's like being like right now, this people are out shopping, is you're going to wind up in lineups. You're going to wind up in spaces where you can't get at what you would like to look at because there's so many people. So it's going to be a huge opportunity to see how you show up in
Mm,
this.
mm. Yeah, what an interesting time, and what an interesting time to come right now when and I think this isn't unusual. I mean, we have these cultural pressures to be a way that isn't natural. And each one of these we go, oh, isn't that interesting? That's just opposite of what the collective is asking us to do right now. And that's not by mistake. The collective has been trying to move us away from what's natural and we're inclined to do. Um, this sense of patience comes up in such a beautiful way. I can think of just different ways it manifests, but what you mentioned earlier on, Lois, is this idea of spaciousness, and we have to. Patience needs spaciousness, and spaciousness creates patience. So they're partners there, and right now we're in this really in the natural world a really interesting place where it is the time of patience because everything's kind of paused. And at least visually, the leaves have come down and, the plants have begun to decay or become decompose in different ways, but there's not a lot of action. And they're exhibiting patience and spaciousness for us. When you just go look at a bare tree, I mean, that's probably the most patient innate being at all, completely. I mean, it's just like, I'm just hanging out here until it's time to do the next thing. And that might serve as a really good metaphor to remind us of the energy of this gate.
Yeah, I love that. That dovetails directly into the keynote sentence for Gate 5, which is the fundamental attunement to natural rhythms, waiting as an active state of awareness, right?
Mm.
And so, really, like, this is the thing. We think about waiting, I think, in this culture as doing nothing, right? Like being held back, having our energy being thwarted in some way. Like, waiting is this thing that's being done to us, I think, in some ways, is how we,
Oh,
right?
so that's actually interesting, Christine. I mean, maybe that's part of the energy for this gate is flipping the story, our story about waiting, that it's not something that's happening to us, it's something we're choosing.
Exactly. And it's not a null state, right? Like it is an active state, right? You're waiting, right? In awareness, right? Like which is totally it's like it's just in a conversation, right? Like if a healthy conversation, you wait and listen to the other person and then you wait for the moment that it seems like you're aware of the time that it's time for you to speak, right? Like this is all we're doing all the time in conversation. Um, so yeah, so I think about that as being a really just a practice, right? Just an interesting time to really think about practicing this active awareness of waiting, right? And what does that feel like? And how can you, like you said, how can you flip that script? And we have such an active oriented culture, right? It's funny that we think about, waiting is doing nothing is somehow a problem, but you're not really doing nothing. You're doing something really profound.
I was thinking about how much acceptance connects to this,
Mm.
because the acceptance of what is. And so there, like you were saying, Lauren, that we've moved so far away from like the natural rhythms and timing of the world and thinking that we can somehow control that. And then thinking we can control everything. And so there's sort of the refusal to be with the natural rhythm of what is, um, and trying to push the edges and change it all the time. It just leads to that impatience. So it's like, how can we, number one, pay attention to our own rhythms? Like, what are the times of the day that they're particularly good, where I'm really feeling productive, and maybe there's a period of the day where I'm a little dopey, and just the paying attention to it and working with that, but also the being out in the world, and there's a rhythm out there, and it may not, there's at times a rhythm that we're not all that happy with. But I was even thinking about, there's things like highways are built for a certain speed, and everybody tries to push that. Not everybody, but a lot of people
Most.
try to push that. So if you're doing the speed limit, most people are passing you. And it's just the I've noticed is, if I try to stay with and keep up with what's going on, I have a much less pleasurable drive than if I drive at the space that feels right for me, which is usually pretty much in alignment with what the road was built for. And so the moving with the natural tides patterns of things, and just like almost like to stop fighting life.
Hmm. Stop fighting life. What a great idea. I think that's like the whole goal, right? Um, Hillary's question she asked with this hexagram waiting of 5. How can you wait patiently with commitment? So it's not just waiting patiently, but it's committing to the waiting patiently. And again, these questions I think hold so much opportunity for us to grow during these periods. And if you're having a hard time grasping any of these concepts, I think using them as a journal prompt each morning, even if you just write a few sentences, it's very interesting how your answer changes over those days. That's certainly been my response, and kind of getting a new aha each time I go back and look at it. I was thinking about this energy of, so it takes an energy to wait. That's what you're sharing, Christine, and strength. And so the extract that comes to mind for me is actually Hawthorn. So when I'm impatient, I feel it right here in my heart. I don't know about anyone else, but I think that's fairly common. And the heart has 4 different functions going on all at once. And what Hawthorn does on the physical level here is it harmonizes each of those functions. Wherever you are, it delivers what's needed to bring it into harmony. And it works almost like a beta blocker would work. It's a very similar chemical reaction. And what does that mean? It prevents you from going into fight or flight. And so it actually, I would see it in this time period, like bumper guards helping you wait. It's not like a gate crossing to stop you, but it's just like, hey, let's just slow down. Let's just wait. You can commit to that. You can be patient. Hawthorn is very good at helping when those big emotions come up through us, and an emotion is moving energy and it wants us to take action or do something. Hawthorn's very good, again, that beta blocking effect, going, okay, is that really the action that's needed here? It gives you that pause, like don't react, respond, right? Just hold. And I think that's what could be very useful during this period with Hawthorn, with this time of waiting.
And in connection to that would be paying attention to what is it that's arising in you that you don't trust or you feel fearful about.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is about.
Exactly, Lois. And one of Hawthorne's gifts is that it gives you the courage to let it come through.
Yeah. And once you let it come through, you know it now. I mean, it's come clear.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because this gate in the body graph, again, it's in the sacral, but this gate attaches up to our identity center through gate 15, which is the gate of extremes, right? And so this channel energy is always cycling between what's my rhythm and what's where am I going off into some extreme, right? Some fight or flight, right? So it's interesting to hear you talk about Hawthorn in that way, because this gate 15, it's called extremes, but it is also about it's about a love of humanity, right? So it has all these kind of interesting energies in it. But I don't know, there's just this like higher self connection to this rhythm's energy that I think is really interesting, that Hawthorne seems to tap into. Like, how do we integrate what's right for us in this world that has so many things that are wrong for us, right? In a way, right, that's meaningful, and having that support, I think, could be really fascinating in this time period.
And it's very much giving you direction about where you belong and where you don't belong. Because like with our human designs, there's places where we do belong. And so like getting really aware of where that is would be valuable for anybody. It's like to be in the right work, to be in the right friendships, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this energy is also about that interface between, like, this fixed rhythms is about this rhythm, this gate 5 is about us, our, our pace of life and our way of doing life, yet it's a collective gate, right? It's inside of this larger collective. So how do we choose our own pattern in the world and yet still be part of this bigger thing that's going on, right? Like, and I think about this energy a lot because my older son has this whole channel. He has the whole rhythm channel. And it is very true for him. Like, I see this very much. Like, he has, and always, even as a child, it was very difficult to get him to do anything on my timing, right? Not, or anybody's timing, right? Like, he just is not that person. He still is that person. He sleeps at weird hours. He does things in strange times. Like, he's got his own pace and rhythm in the world. And yet he still lives in the world, right? And so this is the struggle that he's managing right now. Like, how does he be himself, doing his thing in his way in the world that demands so much conformity in some ways, right? And so, I don't know. I just think it's something that we'll maybe all be looking at in this time period. Like, this, where do we sit in between this who I am and how I am in the world space?
And maybe giving other people a little more room to be them too.
Yeah. Well, we can't help but do that, right? Well, we could, but we're tending to our own self, and it opens up space for that. I also think it's important to note that we've got the full moon in Gemini also in this period, which is the most emotional full moon that we will have had in this season. And so I think Hawthorn would be very good at tending to ourselves over the full moon. So even if you don't use it for the entire 5.5 days, I would definitely think about using it on the 4th of December.
Good
Could
to-
be.
think we did it.
Here we are.
All right. So we are complete. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.